Random thoughts. In this video, we are going to read a document and see how the Americans put a lot of pressure on Siad Barre to withdraw from Ogaden. In 1977, in July, Somalia decided to attack Ethiopia and try to liberate the region we know as Ogaden and make it part of Somalia. Of course, it's part of the Greater Somalia policy or goal that the Somali government had pursued for a very long time. The mainstream story is that in early 1978, the Ethiopian military managed to push back on the Somalia National Army and then pushed it out of Ogaden and reclaimed the land. Now, when you read the declassified documents, there is a detail and a very critical detail that has been left out, and that's what we are going to look at today as we read some of the communications between the American government and the embassy in Mogadishu and then to Siad Barre. The Ogaden War officially ended on March 9th, 1978. I need you to mark that date. Now, there is a document that is a telegram communication from the Department of State in the US to the embassy in Somalia. This is a document that was generated on March 7th. It's a telegram. It's a communication from the Department of State to the embassy in Somalia. It is dated Washington, March 7, 1978, 1740Z, 57913, XDs, distribute as notice for ambassador only from secretary. Subject, the secretary's message to Siad. Reference, Mogadishu 0398. Now, this is a message from the Secretary of State to the ambassador in Mogadishu, and the ambassador is being given instructions on what to do. And the telegram reads, please seek an immediate appointment with President Siad to convey to him the following points. 1. The United States and Somalia share certain basic objectives concerning the situation in the Horn. It is imperative that we work together to achieve a peaceful resolution of the conflict. We understand your sympathy for the people of the Ogaden and their strong desire for self-determination. However, we believe that this goal cannot be achieved through the use of force. We share your view on the importance of reducing Soviet influence in the region. An Ethiopian-Cuban Soviet victory in the Ogaden fighting could entrench them in the Horn of Africa. However, we believe such an outcome can only be avoided through a negotiated settlement. 2. In the past, we have outlined principles which we believed took sufficiently into account the interests of all parties as to be an acceptable basis on which we build a negotiated settlement. These principles called for a Somali withdrawal from the Ogaden, the concurrent withdrawal of all foreign combat forces, the placing of neutral observers in the Ogaden during the withdrawal to ensure no reprisals are taken against the inhabitants, and a commitment to begin discussions with regard to the political future of the Ogaden. The United States still subscribes to these principles as the best foundation for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. We believe that they are in the interest of Somalia. However, it is clear to the United States that the longer Somalia refuses to accept them as a basis for negotiation, the more difficult it will be for Somalia's friends to exert their influence on other nations to negotiate on the basis of these principles. The best intelligence available to the American government indicate that the Somali military position in the Ogaden is gravely imperiled in the face of the current Ethiopian offensive. Somali troops now face Ethiopian forces bolstered by well-trained Cuban combat troops of division strength aided by substantial Soviet logistical support and Cuban and Ethiopian air support of considerable magnitude. It is our assessment that the Somali troops cannot survive this offensive without unacceptable losses of men and material. It is also our view that Somalia's military defeat could force it to negotiate on basis of principles which are totally detrimental to its interests. The President believes that the only way to achieve your objectives and the only way to enlist the active diplomatic support of the United States and other friendly nations in the region is to announce and implement a withdrawal of Somali forces from the Ogaden. This must be done in the very near future if you are to avoid a destruction of your forces and a possible invasion of your homeland. You may say publicly that your announcement was in response to a personal appeal from President Carter to take action to bring the human suffering to an end now, when we appear to be engaged in a new round of violence of a scale unprecedented in the Horn of Africa, involving active participation by outside powers. 6. With Somalia's agreement to withdraw, the United States is prepared to initiate a broad diplomatic initiative in support of the above principles, designed to marshal the force of the world opinion in deterrence of an Ethiopian-Cuban invasion of Somalia. Once you have taken the necessary steps to implement your withdrawal, the President will commence consultation with the Congress to seek authority to provide Somalia with some defensive weapons and discuss with other nations the possibility of their also supplying such weapons. You may state publicly that the President is also willing to ask the Congress for additional economic assistance to Somalia under such circumstances. You may also state that the U.S. has indicated that it is prepared to contribute to effort which might be organized to bring about the recovery of the war-ravaged areas of the Ogaden. But we must repeat that the U.S. assistance to Somalia will only be forthcoming after you have publicly announced your intentions to withdraw Somali troops from the Ogaden and they have returned to the Somali side of its internationally recognized frontiers. 8. You should be under no illusion that if you do not take the necessary steps to withdraw your forces from the Ogaden, the United States will come to your assistance if you are invaded. As long as Somali forces remain in Ethiopia, American law prohibits the provision of aid to Somalia, even if Somali territory were invaded. Now, this is a very interesting statement, or these are very interesting instructions that have been given to the ambassador to give to Siad Barre. And you should note that this is on March 7th, and he's being told that he should announce very soon that he's withdrawing from Ethiopia, the Ogaden region. And then it seems like they are telling him there is a way the conflict could be negotiated with the end result of the Ogaden becoming independent or maybe joining Somalia. And he's also being promised that if he exits from the Ogaden region, the United States was going to provide weapons and maybe negotiate or maybe persuade other nations to give Somalia weapons. I don't know whether these were just hot air promises or they were actually met or they were actually delivered. It's hard to tell because how governments work, of course, is sometimes a lot of secrecy. So we'll never know for sure whether these promises were actually delivered. Now, of course, this is on the 7th. And then on the 9th, Siad Barre, of course, declares that Somalia is withdrawing from the Ogaden. And of course, Somalia never went back. And it's not whether there were negotiations that happened after that. They seem not to have gone anywhere, really, as far as the desires of Somalia were concerned. Those are my random thoughts.